In case you didn't know, last year I finally reached 1,000 subscribers, so to celebrate, I talked about my top 10 favorite games of all time, and my number one pick wasn't a Mario game, it wasn't even a Nintendo game, it was Marvel's Spider-Man for the PlayStation 4. I could talk for hours on end on why this game is amazing. It is so unbelievably fun, and engaging, and heartwarming, there's just so much to love. And with Spider-Man 2 coming out later this year, I wanted to talk about one of my favorite things about this game, the boss battles. You get to face off against all sorts of enemies from Spider-Man's past, and seeing these modern versions of these characters is really cool to me. So today, I'm going to rank every boss battle in Marvel Spider-Man from worst to best. The only ones I won't be including are the missions where you just swing around the city, because I don't consider those to be boss fights. I'll also include the boss battles from Spider-Man Miles Morales and the City That Never Sleeps DLC to spice things up. So without further ado, let's go! 17. Mr. Negative Subway. Ironic how one of the main bad guys also has one of the worst boss fights, especially at the halfway point of the game. All this fight boils down to is keep punching Mr. Negative, and if he tries to blast you with his negative energy, simply jump to the side or onto the ceiling. Admittingly, the fight does look pretty cool, but it's incredibly repetitive, and there's no room to move around since you're in the subway train. 16. Silver Sable. For someone who always appears to be a badass, she puts up a very underwhelming boss fight. Sable will shoot at you with her guns, try to kick you, and yeah, that's about it. Her attacks aren't hard to dodge, and as long as you're not attacking while she's winding up an attack, then you'll be fine. This fight is also really short, so there's no feeling of satisfaction after you win. 15. Wilson Fisk. Oh boy, fellas, it's the big bad kingpin of crime. Are you intimidated? Cause I'm sure not. Throughout the game, you'll meet these brutes that are a lot bigger than regular enemies and take more hits to defeat. Kingpin is basically one of those, but with a lot more health. You web up Fisk or throw something to stun him, and then just start wailing on him. I guess it gets a little more interesting in the second half, as Kingpin will start chucking more stuff at you, and some of his henchmen will get in on the action. But this is still the first boss, so it's nothing too exciting. 14. Shocker. Honestly, it shouldn't be a big shock this guy's near the bottom of the list. When the worst thing you do is rob banks, how dangerous can you be? Shocker will shoot shockwaves out of his gauntlet, and you have to wait until he stops moving so you can hurl a chunk of concrete at him. Then you can start getting some hits in. Shocker will use a couple extra attacks as the fight goes on, but it's the same pattern for the whole thing. This boss is kind of fun, but it's not nearly as exciting as the other bosses we're about to get into. 13. Taskmaster. Once you complete all the tasks set up around the city, Taskmaster will randomly show up to challenge you. Being the copycat he is, Taskmaster will use a lot of your moves against you. Hell, he'll even use finishers just like you. The only way to do damage is to throw stuff at him, make perfect dodges, or use your web gadgets to stun him. This boss is a little tough if it's your first time, and having Taskmaster copy all your moves is a neat concept. However, it's not a very memorable fight and could have been more interesting. 12. The Prowler. Here we have our first Miles Morales boss, and it's actually pretty good. I'd say this guy is pretty similar to Taskmaster, but his attacks are much more unique. Not only do they look a lot cooler and are harder to avoid, but he can also turn invisible, shoot massive green lasers, and create clones of himself. The best way to defeat the Prowler is to use your Venom abilities or other electric gadgets to short out his tech. Then you get in as many hits as you can before he retreats. I love how they managed to cram so much cool stuff in a relatively short fight. In fact, now we're getting into the really fun boss battles. 11. Tombstone. It's a good thing Spider-Man has superpowers, or else he'd definitely have a tombstone. I'd say this guy is most similar to Kingpin, but the fight is significantly better. First off, Tombstone has impenetrable skin for the first half, so it takes a lot more hits to tire him out, and his attacks do a lot more damage. He'll also bring in a bunch of henchmen that can also go invincible for a bit. The second half really ramps it up, as Tombstone will trade in his sledgehammer for a flaming chain, which has a much longer range and can cause even more damage. This may not be the hardest fight, but it's very intense. 10. Hammerhead. This Mafia boss has upgraded from his slick blue suit to a giant white mech, equipped with lasers, rocket boots, and other things he'll try to kill you with. Hammerhead will also use his hammer of a head to headbutt you, which causes a massive amount of damage. Performing lots of finishers and utilizing the environment is the best way to defeat him, as well as the other guys that'll come in later on. There's not much more to add that I didn't say about the other bosses, but I just find this fight to be a little bit more fun. 9. RHINO. When a road trip to the raft goes wrong and Spider-Man is knocked out of the battlefield, it's up to Miles to take down this giant son of a gun. This is where you'll first learn to use your Venom energy, which sends a huge blast of electricity towards RHINO, giving you a chance to hit him. But be careful though, because RHINO will also try to punch you, ram into you, or pick chunks off the floor and hurl them at you. Admittingly, this boss isn't that mechanically deep, but damn it, it's so much fun. It makes you feel so powerful, and the Venom abilities are a wonderful addition to the gameplay. 8. RHINO and Scorpion. RHINO was already great on his own, but adding Scorpion to the mix only makes it better. Well, actually, for the first half, you are just fighting RHINO, and he behaves exactly the same as in Miles Morales, with him constantly throwing junk and charging at you. The difference is, you don't have Venom powers, so you must lure RHINO under the crane scattered around the dock and drop them on him to cause damage. After a while, Scorpion will show up and start firing poison, making the fight even more crazy. Getting to fight two bosses at once makes this a lot more interesting, and it's just a lot cooler than fighting one boss by himself. 7. Hologram Vultures. Easily the most hilarious boss out of both games. You get to fight a hologram version of Vulture, while Peter does an evil impression of him. His impressions are so goofy that you can't help but love them. Vulture flies around the stage, and you have to swing around and keep hitting him until he dies. Fighting in the air makes the boss way more engaging, and Vulture will use attacks like shooting metal feathers or simply trying to ram you. However, just when it seems like you might be winning, Vulture's eviler twin brother appears to join the fight. I'm sorry, Peter's impressions are just phenomenal. Anyway, he's literally just a second Vulture, but it makes the fight a lot more entertaining and difficult. 6. Electro and Vulture. It's more or less the same fight, but instead of having two Vultures, you're now fighting Electro teaming up with Vulture. Vulture acts pretty much the same, but now has a lot more health, but Electro will fire streams of electricity at you, and will use a giant transformer to send waves of bolts across the stage. Electro isn't nearly as hard to defeat as Vulture, but he does spice up the action in an interesting way. I also much prefer the area you fight in compared to the hologram Vultures. There's more room to swing around, and it just looks a lot cooler. 5. Cyborg Hammerhead. Listen, I know that Spider-Man games aren't 100% realistic, but I have a hard time believing that this would be possible. But regardless of that, this boss is freaking awesome. Cyborg Hammerhead might be the most aggressive opponent in the series so far. The fight is very fast-paced, and Hammerhead's melee attacks cause a ton of damage. He'll also use lasers, fire missiles, and bring in some of his men wearing high-tech armor. To defeat Hammerhead, you have to keep attacking his legs until they malfunction, and then you can hold him in place to be blasted by SABLE. After a little while, Hammerhead will activate a shield around his body, and you have to throw bombs to shut it down. I don't care how ridiculous this boss is, it is so much fun and insanely creative. 4. ROXXON RHINO. This is the third time we've seen RHINO on the list, and it's easily the best version of him. Our boy's been upgraded with some brand new armor, so it's a lot harder to beat him than the other 2 times. Now when he charges at you, you have to jump on his back and ram him into one of the surrounding tanks to cause damage. This is easier said than done though, because RHINO will send shockwaves across the stage, summon in more enemies shooting guns at you, and even when you do knock off RHINO's armor, he'll start throwing generators and you have to activate them before throwing them back. This battle proves that when it comes to boss fights, bigger truly is better. 3. Mr. Negative OSCORP. The difference in quality between the subway fight and this is astronomical. The first part is pretty simple, with Mr. Negative attacking you with his sword, as well as trying to blast you with his negative energy. While these attacks aren't hard to avoid, he takes a lot more hits to defeat, and he's just harder to hit. Then all of a sudden, Mr. Negative spawns in a giant motherfucking monster demon which constantly swipes at you, and there's a few smaller demons running around as well. I am genuinely at awe with how crazy this fight is. It's just non-stop madness. 2. Dr. Octopus. By far the most gut-wrenching fight in the whole game. Dr. Octavius is too far gone to be helped, so we have no other choice but to fight him. He uses his giant robot arms to reach out and try to hit you, so you must web up or short-circuit his arms, allowing you to get in some real damage. He'll also climb on top of the tower in the middle and make the floor untouchable until you knock him down. But this is just the first phase. The second phase, while not as difficult, is much more cinematic. Both Spider-Man and Doc Ock are clinging to the side of the building, and you have to keep punching and dodging his attacks until you finally knock him out for good. This is the most emotional, heartbreaking final boss I've ever faced in a video game. It was originally going to be number 1, but instead, that spot goes to 1. The Tinkerer. Some people might disagree with me, but I think the Tinkerer just barely edges out on top. The best word I can use to describe this fight is extreme. The Tinkerer unleashes so many insane attacks on you, especially in the later phases. She uses her technology to make some pretty creative stuff, like sentry guns, a super stretchy sword, and even giant buzzsaws. Like, holy shit. However, at this point in the game, you've already mustered up your own huge array of moves and venom abilities, so beating the living crap out of the Tinkerer is unbelievably satisfying. Combine that with the crazy visuals and the amazing music, and you've got what is, in my opinion, the best boss fight in the entire Spider-Man series. I love both of these games to death. There is so much fun to be had in both of them, and with Spider-Man 2 coming out later this fall, well, let's just say it's a good time to be a Spider-Man fan. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, then make sure to give it a like, and let me know down in the comments what your favorite boss is. Also, subscribe to my channel with notifications on, so you'll know when I post more videos like this. Have a great day, stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next one.